Hi, I'm Dr. Cio Hernandez, and I'm an approved EMDR consultant. Welcome to Got This, a virtual EMDR for clinicians training that is specifically for coronavirus. This course is only for licensed clinicians who have completed basic EMDR training and not intended to teach EMDR therapy. There are no EMDR units. This course is intended for emergency response for those of us on lockdown and trying to meet the ongoing and crisis needs of our clients. I put this video together because several of my colleagues have called me asking me how I do online EMDR because I talk about it in all the classes that I teach. And I've done it for many years very successfully, and I'm able to take people down to a SUD score of 0 and a VOC of 7 pretty easily, and they stay there pretty well. So I've had pretty good success. So if you are a licensed therapist and you're already doing EMDR, I'm hoping that you'll be able to use this as an opportunity to start being able to offer EMDR in even more ways for your clinical practice. The coronavirus just happens to give us an opportunity to exercise this muscle right now, as many of us are on lockdown and don't have the ability to see our clients in person. So I hope this is something that is helpful to you. If you have more questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to be able to send you, more tips if that's helpful to you. I'm at CIO@reachyourgoalnow.com. Virtual EMDR, getting tech ready. Part of making sure that you're able to do EMDR is making sure you've got your tech already set up. So make sure you have reliable internet. If you're doing this from a laptop, you want to make sure that your laptop is set up in a place where it's going to have reliable internet service throughout the session. If you're doing it from a desktop, then again, same thing, make sure that there aren't going to be any interruptions there. Make sure you're in a confidential setting. During lockdown, it's for many of us, we have families that we live with. So making sure that you have a confidential place to be able to do your appointments. If you have a smartphone, make sure that your microphone and camera are enabled, but you can also use your camera on your computer, tablet, or other device. Just make sure you have a good microphone so that you can both they can hear you, and make sure your speakers are good enough that that you can hear them. Sign up for a HIPAA compliant platform and make sure that they send you a business associates agreement. Mostly because this is going to set you up for the future. I use Doxy.me, but there are several other platforms that are HIPAA compliant and give business associates agreements. There's VC, there's Secure Video, Simple Practice. Zoom, I think, also offers a business associates agreement, but you want to make sure you look into that as well. Set up appropriate lighting. So you don't want to be in a backlit area, otherwise they're not going to be able to see you. Make sure that you can also access a browser to be able to research any kinds of resources and information in the area where the client is. This will make sure that you are compliant with the regulations of California to be able to access local resources where the client is. And wherever you are in the United States, it's going to be helpful to be able to access resources wherever your client is. In California, you have to be licensed in California to be able to see people who are in California. And we cannot see people who are living in other states or who are in another state if we are licensed in California. So they actually have to be in the state where we are licensed. We can be anywhere, but they have to be in the state where we're licensed. So make sure you are following the laws of your state. Here are a few tools that you want to make sure you have that can just help you be a little bit more successful and make it a smoother process. If you have a whiteboard, I love them. They work great, and then you can use them for documentation also. But if not, just use your regular EMDR worksheet or a paper and pen to be able to document the things that happen during the session. Find things that you want your clients to be able to follow for bilateral stimulation, or have a way to be able to administer alternative bilateral stimulation techniques. We're going to talk about this more in a couple slides. Make sure if you're using whole body bilateral stimulation or whole body EMDR that you actually have room to move and that you have enough space so that you can still be seen in the camera when you're doing it with your clients, if you're modeling it to them. Make sure you have a nice enough shirt. It doesn't really matter so much what you wear on the bottom of it, but you should look presentable and professional as best as possible for whatever parts are going to be able to be seen in the camera. And then have an open mind. We're being flexible here, so we want to make sure that we're doing what we can. If you're all trained in EMDR, then you should know that there are 8 phases of EMDR. History taking and treatment planning, 1. 2, preparation. 3, assessment. 4, desensitization. 5, installation. 6, body scan. 7, closure. And 8, reevaluation. The subsequent slides are going to be talking about how to do these different phases using technology. Phase 1, virtual history taking. Well, if you're already on a plan, then you can just proceed with whatever appropriate phase you're already on. You might want to specifically ask if they already have any coronavirus triggers that you need to attend to before you go back to that. But either way, if you're already on a path, it's okay to stick to that path. You can just move it to a virtual platform. But if there are coronavirus triggers, then you might need to do a little processing around that before you keep going. But I use my whiteboard to map across the ages and stages and to help figure out what our targets are, what we're really working on. And I work backwards. I use social developmental stages when they give me some beliefs that have come up at different ages. I just kind of write them on the board. Even if we're not at that part yet of the assessments, I write down some of the things that I hear them saying to me in I am statements, and then I map it across their age. So if they say something like, everything is my fault, then I ask them, well, what happened when you were around 4 or 5 years old? Because that goes with the developmental stage, and oftentimes people will think that it's their responsibility when things happen to them at that age. So initiative versus guilt. So I'll work backwards and fill up a map during this section just to help understand what happened and what are the things that they want to work on. Now, if they're not interested in looking backwards and they're more interested in future templating work too, then we can map forward too. And I just make sure that they can see the whiteboard either on the whiteboard that I'm physically writing on behind me with markers, or if you're using Zoom or a platform that allows you to use a whiteboard, virtual whiteboard on the screen, just make sure that they're able to see it so that they can have different ways of being able to process this information, both visually as well as auditorially. And especially during this time, during coronavirus, when so many people are triggered and they may not be in their bodies. So listening and learning in trauma states is very difficult. We want to make sure that they have a way to be able to follow us as easily as possible and as many ways so that we can hopefully have a better chance of them being able to integrate material. Phase 2, virtual preparation. Well, right now, there are a lot of people, again, that are on freak out mode or that are just panicking for one reason or another. And this may be triggering earlier ego states, earlier times when life felt like it was out of control, or they weren't able to predict what was going to happen. And this is certainly true for unpredictable environments like abusive family systems or in alcoholic family systems, or people that come from war-torn areas, or, situations where they were not able to predict what was going to happen. So resourcing is vital in times of crisis. So if you are choosing to do this kind of modality with folks, during this time, this might be all you're doing during lockdown and quarantine sessions, and that's totally fine. Here we want to be able to assess readiness to be able to do more. I've done a bunch of sessions in the last week virtually, and there are a lot of people that are just more in crisis mode. So stabilization and resourcing has been pretty much all that we're able to do, and getting them to a place where they can feel like they can do something rather than spin their wheels or worry about themselves or their loved ones. So you might not get a regulated person, especially during a global crisis. So start wherever you are, and that's totally okay. If they are able to proceed, and even if they're not, this may be a way to be able to help you figure out what kind of desensitization you're going to use later. For example, if somebody is completely dysregulated, you might choose to use the flash technique rather than having them actually go and look at pictures. So for more on that, I would suggest that you look at Phil Manfield's work. But it might also help you understand if somebody has lots of nervous energy that they need to get out. I actually really enjoy doing whole body EMDR, and now that Ad de Jong has given us some more tools to do that, you might want to consider looking him up with some different tips on how to do his whole body EMDR. There are lots of different resourcing techniques that you can teach people during this time and try out with folks, including some grounding through teaching them about deep breathing and intentional deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation. We can try to see if we can find a safe or a peaceful place. Right now during coronavirus, hey, in many family systems, it's difficult to find safe places. And there was even, I don't know how accurate this data it was, but it seems to make sense that relationships get stressed during times of stress as well. So finding safe places in small quarters may be very difficult. So we might have to find ways to either resource some imaginary places, let them borrow places, or it just may be that there isn't a place where they feel safe at all. So we might need to find alternatives to safe places, like people who might make them feel safer, or situations where they may feel safer, activities that they enjoy doing, or positive body feelings that they like to have, or memories of a time when they might have felt better about themselves. We can also practice using some containers so that they can hold specific information that may be overwhelming for them right now. There are all sorts of other things that you may be able to do as well. One thing that could be helpful right now during coronavirus time is imagining a future healthy adult self. And even a current one, to be able to see the way that they're able to fight off bugs and keep themselves healthy and their loved ones as well. We can engage their spiritual beliefs, which can be very helpful, whatever their spirituality is, whether they have an organized religion that they belong to or the way that they make sense of the world can be seen as a resource. And engaging in pleasurable activities or things that they enjoy doing to be able to do a little bit more of that. Sometimes I'll do that one and then just have them send me a little note or something when they have done what I call X amount of minutes of power activity, whether it's a power writing exercise or whatever they're doing. There are lots of different opportunities that you could do for resourcing, but do try to do something, because right now people need more resources than ever before. Phase 3 is the virtual assessment. So this is where I take it back to the whiteboard and I actually write it out for them to be able to see whatever the issue or the problem is that they're working on. I write down what the negative beliefs are that they have about themselves in one color that they choose. And then I write down what they would like to believe about themselves in a different color that they also choose. If possible, if you only have one color, then it is what it is, but do your best. Then I ask them how distressing the problem or that picture was that they brought up at the beginning, and I have them rated on a scale of 0 to 10. 0, not at all. 10 is the worst. And then I ask them how much they believe the positive belief is true. 1, not at all. 7, it's totally true. So, and I write it down right on the board with them. So if they have on the board, I'm not good enough as the negative cognition, and they want to believe I am good enough, and I ask them, okay, how much do you believe I'm good enough? 1, not at all. 7, totally. I write down on the board all of the feelings that come up when they think about the picture, as well as the negative beliefs. And I just put it right there on the board. And I ask them where they feel it in the body, and I write it on the board as well. That way they can see it all right in front of them. Again, you can either do it on the actual whiteboard and make sure they can see it in the camera, or do it on your virtual whiteboard so that they can see it on their screen. Phase 4, desensitization. This is where you're going to actually choose what method you're going to use to do your virtual EMDR. Are you going to use eye movements, or are you going to have them actually do it to themselves, like on a butterfly hug or any other kind of tapping on themselves? Are you going to have the flash technique? Realistically, you probably would have figured this one out a little bit earlier if they couldn't actually look at the pictures, but it's okay. You can use it here too. Or are you going to do a whole body overload like what Ad de Jong talks about? This is my favorite approach to use now, and pretty much what I use almost exclusively, whether it's online or in person. Or are you going to use another kind of bilateral stimulation? Do they have a way to be able to audio or something else? I have an app that's going to be coming out later on this year that is another option that you can use. And I tested it with test anxiety students, and it works pretty well, both individually and as well as in a group setting. If you're choosing to use eye movements, you have magic in your home everywhere. So you can pretty much take anything at home and turn it into something that you use to follow on the screen. You can make a wand out of almost anything. So this is one thing that you can use to just make magic happen. I have these wooden spoons. One of them has a smiley face on it, and my client loves that one. So that's what she uses to cook up a new story. It's also what she uses to make a new relationship to wooden spoons, because that's what her mother used to hit her with when she was young. I use scrub brushes a lot. People love the scrub brushes. They say it's to clean off those affected areas that have goop or stuff stuck to them that no longer helps them anymore. But you can use it for whatever your client says they want to use it for. I let them pick whatever they want to choose to follow on the screen. Pens are great, especially since most of us have a pen. And sometimes I'll talk to them about using the pen to write a news story, whatever that might be for them. But they tell me what they want to use. I have a microphone that they follow as well. It's just a cordless microphone that I have from some old karaoke machine at some point, and they love that, especially when they feel like they don't have a voice. Or their younger ego states felt like they weren't allowed to use their voice. Your fingers are perfect. They're attached to you, so you've got the magic touch. So you can certainly use your fingers to follow on the screen, just like you can do in an in-person session. Sometimes, though, I'll also print out a picture that represents something important to them as far as the memory that they're working on, or their picture they're trying to reprocess, or some imagery that's reminiscent of what their target is. Realistically, you can use anything else that you happen to have around that makes sense to their story. And I've used all sorts of crazy things. So anything is useful as long as it works well with what they're trying to accomplish. Whatever BLS option you choose for your virtual desensitization, make sure you can see yourself administering the option in the camera, and then also make sure you can see them engaging in the experience. For example, if you're having them follow something with their eyes, make sure that the eyes are following whatever you're showing them on the screen, and that it goes across the entire screen. I've had people tell me that it's only going across half the screen. And so I had to make some adjustments to my camera to be able to have them be able to see it across the whole screen. If they're doing self-stimulation, help them understand when to speed it up or when to slow it down during appropriate times. For example, you might go faster when you're reprocessing and slower during installation. You can also do it on yourself, so that way they have something to mirror, which is great for their mirror neurons, but also great for them to have a demonstration so that they can feel like they're on track, and they also know what you want them to do, how long you want them to do it, and they can start wrapping up when you want them to wrap up. If you're doing whole body EMDR, then you better make sure you have enough room to be seen in the camera. It might seem strange at first, but that's easily adjustable, and realistically, people are very forgiving. So say your head gets cut off, that's okay, as long as they can see what you're trying to get them to be able to do in their whole body experience. So remember, this is about overtaxing the working memory. So we often laugh a lot as we're figuring this out. Just do your best. It's all a part of it. If you're overloading the working memory and some parts don't go the way you think it's going to go, well, that's part of it all too. I add music or a metronome to it as well. Again, we're overtaxing the working memory. So I have them pick the music that they want to use, and that works out way better than me trying to guess what I think the music that goes along with their target is. If they absolutely can't, then I give them a few options and have them choose. But I find it's a lot better when they tell me than when I tell them. For your virtual questions, cognitive interweaves, and progress, check in as you would any other session. You can plop in little jewels and keep on going just as you would if they were in person. So just document on the whiteboard so that they see their progress too. Or on the paper, just make sure you can show them from time to time. And then figure out, did their SUDS go as far down as it's going to? And did the VOC go up as high as they want it to? If not, keep going. And if so, move on to installation. Phase 5, virtual installation. Just like if they were in person, we're strengthening the positive cognition that's taking the place of the negative cognition. Here we can slow it down into slow, short sets of whatever bilateral stimulation technique you choose to use. And we're just going to repeat it a few times. And I sometimes add music that goes with the belief that they're installing. But again, they choose what music goes with whatever positive belief. I might also suggest other transitional objects to strengthen their positive belief, like tying a blanket around them as a cape for I'm powerful, or I'm strong, or, PowerPoint shows this giraffe, but a giraffe is great for I can take healthy risks, stick my neck out there and be okay at the end. Sometimes I give my clients actual capes in the session, and so I just ask them to dig it out and put it on. And it can be a really great way to have a transitional object during this installation phase as well. Phase 6, the virtual body scan. Just like you would if they were sitting in front of you in person, you can ask them to check in head to toe and toe to head if anything is left in the body regarding the problem that they just desensitized. If they notice anything, reprocess those aspects that they just learned or that they just found in their bodies with whatever method that you used above or any other choice of BLS that you think would be more appropriate at that time. For example, I will often have them just tap right in those places, left, right, that are still coming up. So if they have something happening in their chest, I'll have them tap left, right, right on their chest. You can hear me tapping and my voice sounding funny. But if it's left in their head or in their arms or in their belly or their legs, same thing. I'll just have them tap back and forth in whatever area is affected. If they're doing whole body, I might have them do whole body and tap at the same time. So I'll have them moving back and forth at the same time I have them tapping in those areas, and I might even have them following with my fingers and listening to sounds at the same time. Phase 7, closure. Make sure there's some time at the end of the session to package folks back up. And especially during this time, during coronavirus, and if people are having to re-engage with their families, or they're going back into isolation, we want to make sure that they're ready for whatever their world is looking like. So if possible, during the reprocessing parts, that we're able to get to a place where we can end with a bow, that's the best. If this is not a complete session, then we want to make sure that they're packaged enough to reintegrate. So here we want to be able to regulate folks, offer some relaxation and stabilizing techniques. I often suggest to people that they go on a walk or do something active before driving or re-engaging into the world, especially if they may be somewhat dissociated or triggered or in some other altered state. As of right now, the public health department is saying that it's still okay to be able to go outside and do physical activity. If that's a possibility for your client, you can suggest that. And if not, then even just finding a place for themselves, wherever they are, to be able to take some time to come back to themselves and to be safe enough to be able to proceed. So with coronavirus, finding the space to do this with children and family around can be really difficult. But here we're going to try to build all sorts of creative ways to make it happen before they have to re-engage into their worlds. If we're together for the next several weeks, we want to make sure that we have enough resources when we close, that they can continue to use those resources between our sessions. Phase 8, virtual reevaluation. Well, hopefully you're going to set up another session so you can check in at the beginning of the next online or in-person session, depending on when you're doing this. And hopefully we're able to have in-person sessions again soon. And you're going to check in to see if their SUDS is still close to or at a 0. And if their VOC is at a 7, anything left in their body, any big feelings that are left. If any of those still have something there that's related to the memory or the picture or the target, then we want to assess what's left and go back to reprocessing and doing some desensitization around those areas. And if not, then we get to celebrate and resource during this emergency management time. So here we want to consider when and whether it's appropriate to even move on to another memory. It may not be the right time right now. If they are in a triggered state, we might want to work on actually resourcing that and continuing to work on that before we work on any other big ticket items. Of course, it's up to you and your client to figure out what's going to be appropriate for them. They may not be phased at all by the coronavirus, but certainly there are lots of people that are losing their jobs right now. And that extra economic instability is actually creating other levels of crises. There are people that are not able to be connected with their loved ones or can't even visit their aging parents, especially if they're in facilities where many of the facilities are on lockdown and aren't allowing visitors right now. So, there's so many different kinds of stressors that are happening concurrently with the coronavirus or that are caused by many of the conditions that the coronavirus has created now, that you don't have to go back to a memory. This is happening right now in real time. So using the Pressy protocol and other protocols can be helpful during this process as well. Here's a coronavirus prevention message that we all need to be taking to heart. Whether or not folks are in lockdown areas, we want to make sure people are well. We don't want to expose ourselves because we can actually expose other people that may be more vulnerable. So ask people if they have symptoms before their appointments if they're coming in person. If they are having symptoms, fever, sore throat, difficulty breathing, cough, then we want them to either reschedule or we can offer them an online appointment. Again, we want to be able to minimize contact with the virus so that we don't spread it. Everyone should wash their hands thoroughly and frequently for 20 seconds every time they wash their hands. We want to practice social distancing and, keeping to ourselves. If we are sick, we definitely want to stay home and self-quarantine. We want to keep ourselves away if we're sick from the other people, even in our own home. So we want to self-quarantine in our own homes, even if we're sharing it with other people as well. Cough and sneeze into the inner elbow. My preschoolers called it the vampire. It's because we want to limit the spread of the droplets, but we also don't want it to be on our hands because our hands touch a lot of things, or a lot more things than our inner elbow does. We also want to avoid touching the face and minimizing contact with, like, children often touch our faces, so we want to be able to minimize the contact with our face with contaminants. And then other things that we might want to do is take care of our mind, body, and spirit. You might want to exercise, reach out to folks by phone, social media, or internet, or any other means of connecting with loved ones. And hopefully you're going to set your mind to got this mode, because realistically, most of us are going to be able to survive this with not that many long-term implications physically. It may take us a while to recover economically and in other ways. But if we take care of ourselves and we take care of our small community around us, then hopefully we can limit the spread of this virus that is much more dangerous to some of our community than to others. I hope this video has been helpful and that you'll start being able to see clients online, especially to be able to do your EMDR therapy sessions. Just remember, you got this, virtually and physically. I'm Dr. Cio Hernandez from Got This Incorporated. We're located in Berkeley. You can email me at drciorreachyourgoalnow@gmail.com. You can also call us at 833-GOAL-NOW. And you can email me if you want to be one of the first users of the Got This app at gotthisinc@gmail.com. You can also ask for additional information, and we can send you the link to the website as soon as it's up and going. I've been using this app for the last 9 years to be able to help people doing some self-EMDR when they aren't in session, and it has worked marvelously for all sorts of different presenting problems, from difficulty sleeping to test anxiety, performance anxiety, phobias, pretty much anything, and people have given me a lot of positive feedback about it. So I'm happy to be able to share it with you that you can use in your practice with your clients as well. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you stay well. You got this.